And we're back for part 2 of our interview with Barbara Khouri, my former executive coach. And Dana, like we do when we kick off our pod episodes, what you loving and not loving?
What you loving and not loving? Okay, I have 2 from relatively recent headlines. And what I'm not loving is that horrific, toxic, sexist culture at the FDIC. And I don't get how in this day and age, those cultures still exist, but they do. So anyway, I'm happy that it was exposed.
Okay, partner, time out. For those of you that don't know, I've been laying at the beach for 2 weeks. And usually when Dana brings something up or I bring something up, by the way, this is all off the cuff. We don't share our likes and dislikes. It's not scripted.
I would say this is the opposite of scripted.
Yeah. So what happened at the FDIC? I don't even know. This is terrible. I have been kind of keeping up with the news, but I didn't see this.
Honestly, it's just exactly what I said. Is there was utterly quick. I would have to say it was either a year or 2 years ago, a group of people banded together and made a very public complaint about the FDIC's culture and that it was sexist and toxic and abusive and there was no accountability. That if someone was discriminating or harassing or just generally being abusive, like they were just transferred somewhere else and all that stuff. So then the FDIC can't get out of this. So they call in a law firm to do a neutral investigation. What happened fairly recently is that law firm released its report saying that the FDIC is one of the worst toxic, sexist, discriminatory.
And it wasn't good.
Yeah, it was not good. It was not good. And then I don't know if you call him the president or the chairman of the FDIC, went before a congressional committee to answer questions about it. And this was kind of nice. It was bipartisan. It was just like Democrats and Republicans alike were like, what the hell, dude? And I have no confidence in you. I'm paraphrasing, but I do think actually some congressmen or women just said, we have no confidence that you could turn this around. This is all on your watch. Why would we have confidence? So he did end up stepping down, although I think he's still there while they find a replacement. So anyway, it's just killing me that in this day and age, that stuff's still going on. But here's what I'm loving, Rose. Here's what I'm loving. To loop back around to something I commented on a bunch in season 1, FTX, the infamous crypto, they are going to be able to repay all the customers that lost their money. And I think that's wonderful. And that doesn't mean that shareholders will, but I don't have a ton of sympathy for the shareholders. They knew there was no governance. They knew it was being run by 25-year-olds, but I did feel horrible for the customers, right? For the people who were like just on it and believing in it. And I'm just so happy they're going to get their money back.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. So what am I loving and not? I'll tell you what I'm loving. There is no replacement for quality time with family. So I just got 2 weeks of that and I'm just incredibly blessed that I was around my folks and friends and my family and had time for games and laughter and stories and memories and creating new ones. So I absolutely love that.
And fun text chains with your peeps.
Yeah, and fun text change.
Listener, Rose is 5 shades tanner than when I last saw her. So yes, this 2 weeks in the beach treated her well.
Well, if you don't know me personally, I am half Italian, and that becomes very visible when I spend a fair amount of time in the sun. Even with 100 SPF for all of you worried about my skin condition, 100 on my face and 30 on my body, and lots of time in the shade, it just doesn't matter. My skin just absorbs super tan. Sun. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to, and I don't know if I'm not liking or liking this one. This one's kind of on the fence. So I had another travel issue. Like, it's like, yeah, no matter where I go, every time I get on a plane, there seems to be a delay or a cancellation. And this time we were taking off out of Kansas City, coming back from the beach, and my husband and our friends, and we were coming back and we were taking off. And it literally sounded, as we were taxiing out of the gate, it sounded like, And I'm like, wow, this is a really bumpy runway. The tarmac is very bumpy. So we ran out. I had never heard anything like that. We didn't run. The pilot drove the plane out. And they're like, I'm sorry, we're going to be turning around because we don't have any confidence in the maintenance of our landing gear. So we are having landing gear problems and we are going back to the gate. And it literally sounded like,
oh my God.
And it was the most horrible sound I've ever had on a plane. And so this is kind of a silver lining story. I guess this isn't too bad, but I just did have 2 weeks of vacation. So how many really bad things can you have happen to you in 2 weeks at the beach? But on the way back, it sounded really bad. And after you get your initial like, oh man, when am I going to get home? Are they going to have another plane for us? Are we spending the night in Kansas City? You go, yeah, kind of, that's all better answers than landing in Phoenix without any landing gear. But we just seem to be having a lot of maintenance issues on flights lately, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah, and freaking anxiety producing, some of those.
Yeah, especially when you see all the news that's coming out of the challenges in Boeing right now and all the plane issues that we've had. So I think rightly so. This is not being critical of the airlines. They're being very cautious.
Good. Yeah, that's a thumbs up. Yeah, we could do a whole pod on Boeing.
Oh, we could. Actually, that'd be pretty interesting.
Maybe we will. All right, now we got to get to Barb.
Yeah. So we're getting ready for our part 2 of our interview with former retail executive and current executive coach, Barbara Khouri. So with that, let's jump into our next part of our discussion with Barb, where she's going to talk about management and leadership, the difference between the two, the critical nature of having a policy in one of our favorite topics this season, which is the future of work and some of the ramifications of the new work environment. And with that, we will be talking with Barb. Welcome back, Barb.
So I'm curious, Barb, if you've seen this. I have a passionate point of view that I often see leadership celebrated and management minimized. And what I mean by that is leadership is be inspiring, set a vision, be in touch with the external landscape, and management being more about enabling the day-to-day work. And I see one celebrated and the other minimized to no one's service. Like that actually does not serve the individual or the organization. But I'd love to know your perspective on that or your take on that.
I believe that if the ultimate boss, had bone deep self-confidence, that wouldn't be happening, because it's easy to say, well, the LT is the most important. Believe me, I see that a lot, and the companies will go nameless, and they don't appreciate. I think that management and leadership are different, but they're equally as important. And by that, I mean, if your customer service people aren't doing their jobs, shame on the company. And we're all of value. We're all human beings who want to do the best jobs they can do. And I do believe that, Dana, they're just different jobs. And one is more of a leadership position and one is more of a management position. So in terms of, are they different? Sure. I think some management positions are more or less like customer service or processes or administrative things or whatever. But each is a critical cog in the wheel of running that company. And it's not diminished. It's equally as important. And I think if top-level leaders have such egos that they have to think that they're more valuable, I think that's where the problem is. When I did turnarounds, I appreciated my people so much. And if they wanted to try something different, I'd say, go for it. Just let's make sure we track it so that I know if it's working properly. But I think that's the kind of thing that human beings want to be valued. Employees want to be valued. And I think it's almost as simple as that. To me, they're just different jobs. My job is not more important than the janitor's job, in all seriousness.
Yep, I agree. So, Rose.
Yes, Dana.
Shall we move to the state of work today?
Oh, we should.
Okay, so, Barb.
I can't talk about bone deep self-confidence anymore, huh? I guess I'm done.
Well, actually, that's a fabulous segue, because right now, the state of work and what the workplace should look like and be is really in flux. And I am bumping into managers and leaders all the time that don't necessarily know the answer because there really isn't one yet. It's a time of massive experimentation. And I'm just curious. I talked to a manager once, leader, manager, whatever you want to call it, director, VP level. And for him, transitioning from working with staff and peers 5 days a week to only being in 2 days a week. And then even then you're not really seeing everybody because everybody's in at different times. For him, it was like moving from managing in 3D to managing in 2D. And it was harder. And as you've been working with clients, what their challenges have been managing and leading within this new world of work.
It's problematic is such an insignificant word to use with this. But, we talked about leadership and management just a couple of minutes ago. And this is where I think leadership should be taking a very firm stance. I can't tell you how many companies don't have a policy for how often or when you should be in work, or if you should be in work. So let's start with that. If leaders owe anything to their employees, it's clarity and communication. And this is why we're doing this. And we think it's important, et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't see that. And this is years after the pandemic has come and gone. So maybe during the pandemic, I think it would have been a big mistake to make decisions. But the companies that I think are more stable that I see have definite rules about when people should come in, when they shouldn't come in. And it's not, well, I think I'll come in on Tuesday this day and Friday the next day. Well, you'll miss the whole team, quite frankly. And so it was interesting because I knew this was going to be a question that you wanted to raise. So first of all, setting some policies and rules. And I think, listen, leaders are there to make the tough decisions, quite frankly, and at least set a standard and a regulation. And if it has to be changed, that's fine. But again, put something there that everybody's going to agree to or, do. But when you talked about 2D and 3D, and I said, I hadn't thought about it that way. And if I could, I'll just give you a couple of quotes. So this is a quote. And so physical 2D objects do not truly exist. I think that says it all. And then conversely, 3D can be held and shaped and molded, and it is an object. It is an object that relates, that has depth, that is interactive, and can engage and be complex. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm not kidding. That said it all to me. It really did.
That's a good segue, Barb, because there are senior leaders, CEOs, who are putting stringent work from work policies in place. And I don't think any of them are pivoting back to 8 to 5, 5 days a week, but you will work from work a portion of the week. And they're getting a lot of scrutiny. What do you think are some of the unintended consequences of a fully remote work environment?
Honestly, and I know both sides of it. I mean, my son's company who will go, he's an investment banker. I think within a year of the pandemic hitting, he was told that people would come back to the office 4 days a week, period, end of story. And it stayed that way. And it wasn't 5, but it was 4. But sometimes he'll still go in on the 5th day. That's what I mean about just having a communication. I think, this has proceeded over time. I mean, obviously there was so much fear during the pandemic, and I understand that, and people shouldn't have stepped foot in an office. I think, though, that from reading some of the statistics, I think the benefits, first of all, one model's not going to fit all. And as an example, if you just do customer service and you have a call center, there is no earthly reason, candidly, why you have to go into the office every day to make, to do your calls. If though, however, and I was thinking about this, doing turnarounds, doing startups, there are so many decisions that are made so quickly. That's why agility and adaptability are part of my mantra. We would be dead. We would be out of business if we weren't together making decisions quickly. So in a situation like that, I don't think it'll ever go back to 5. But I do think for certain types of businesses, you should determine, if your people need to be there. If you're a consultant and you're traveling all the time, then maybe you don't have to be in the office 4 days a week, because you have another thing. But so I do think it's one size does not fit all. But I do think, Rose, to get to your point, it's like the 3D thing, the connection, the creativity, the reality of this thing. And I really do believe that mental health issues are going to increase. And I did read a study from the Harvard Business Review, and it indicated that, first of all, face-to-face meetings are 34 times more effective than virtual calls. Now, I don't know if I believe that, but that's an HBR article. That's not Barbara saying this. And the other thing that the reality of it is frightening is that 72% of workers feel lonely every month. 72%. Now, that's sad. I mean, that's not only sad, but frightening. And I think also what's happened is that the benefits of working from home, you know what they are. I think they're diminishing. I think there's not you know what? Rose is sitting next to me. I think I'll go in and ask her about this project that I might want to work on. Where's the creativity? How do you build relationships? How do you build trust if you don't see that person? I told you about this client that I was talking about who had the epiphany, and she said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming to see me, because this never would have been done, and this insight would never have happened if we had done this virtually. And I believe that. So I think there has to be a return to work, has to be in some way. And it'll be different for different people, but I'm concerned about the mental issues. I'm concerned about the connection. I'm concerned about the culture of the company. One of the other things that I was thinking about is if I'm observing people and seeing how they're interacting or seeing how they're interacting with the boss, I've learned something from that situation. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what benefits could come from actually interacting with people. And even the mental health issues. If you had a good buddy at work and you had a problem with your family or you had a problem with something else, it would be nice to go to that person and to say, as Rose and I, we would talk about this, or you and Rose would talk about it. And you might do a virtual call, but then you'd say, it's 10 o'clock. I got to get off because my next call is going to happen in 2 minutes. And then we're scheduled back to back. There's no humanity there. There just isn't.
During times in my life that were extremely challenging personally, I am so incredibly thankful that I had a job to go into, because it just allowed me to exit out of the personal sphere for a while and focus on something else. And then on top of it, I've been fortunate in almost anywhere I've worked that I do have that supportive group of colleagues as well.
There's so much value. And, I am constantly thanked by my clients if they'll say, can we do a face-to-face? And I'll say, of course. I think I started traveling. I remember being in JFK on a Monday morning at 8:30, and I was the only one in the security line. Maybe something happened here that I should know about, that they haven't told me. But that's how soon I started traveling. One of my meetings with a new client was done 6 feet away from each other with masks on, but we still were together in the same room, in the same place. So I think the benefits of going to some kind of work, back to work, are so much greater. Two other things. I also am concerned about how AI is going to start to affect people's mentality even more than now, the insecurity of what AI is going to be. Well, I just think that, Jeffrey Hinton is the supposed godfather of AI, and you know more about this, Rose, than I'll ever know. But, he actually left a job because he is so concerned about AI. And talk about people needing bone deep self-confidence. They're going to need a lot of bone deep self-confidence when AI comes in whatever way to these companies, because fear is my job's going to be obsolete. There's going to be this entity that comes in, whatever this entity is. And I think there are real concerns. And I think people have to be worried about that. At least if you're in the office, maybe that could help a little bit.
That's a great point. Okay, so let's do one more question and then we'll wrap.
Yes. That's it? Good. I was ready to talk
It's
more.
so
I know.
good.
We could talk
It's
forever.
so good.
Oh my
Okay.
God, Barb. This
And
is just the beginning. When I go to New York, I'm looking you up.
I got my bone deep self-confidence in 3 pages here. She let me do 1 sentence.
Okay. So, final question.
You do know I'm so glad I can do it with you because my kids don't listen to me.
We
You
all
do know that.
understand that.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
So, we've talked about a lot of things that can be overwhelming to a manager or leader. We've talked about self-confidence and accountability and crisis management and the new work environment. You have one thing that you can tell a manager or leader who's feeling overwhelmed. What are you going to tell them?
Can I say that they should put BDSC tattooed on their wrists? Or
Okay.
can I say that?
That
No,
works.
no.
That works.
No, you know what? I really thought about this because I did a long laundry list of things. And then I said, wait a minute, what's the one? Trust yourself. Trust yourself. Trust yourself. That's what it's all about. Trust yourself. Okay. I can do this. It might not be 100% perfect, but that's okay. We're human beings, aren't we? I mean, last I looked.
That's awesome.
I just wrap with a deep thank you. I've heard about you for so long, and it's just such a thrill to meet you. I just love your career journey and wonderful to meet you in person. And now when I'm in New York, I'm going to look you up.
Absolutely, positively. I've loved it. And I look forward to seeing you in person sometime, Dana. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. And from me, it's been 13 beautiful, amazing, rich years. And Barbara was my coach, but now she's my friend, my lifelong friend. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing everything you've told me to our audience. So thank you so much.
Well, you know I love you, and you're so incredibly capable and doing such wonderful things now that good for you. You're on to your second career. I love you.
Rock and roll. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Wow. Another great session with Barb. Such great nuggets and insights. What are your hot takes, Dana?
I loved her line, and it was in the context of a hybrid workplace, but really it applies to many things. If leaders owe anything to staff, it's clarity. I love that. It also reminded me of another quote that is, if you can't have certainty, you can at least have clarity. Meaning, here are the things we know, here are the things we don't, or here's what we're going to pilot, and then we're going to learn from it and adjust. I like how she said, from her perspective, the most stable companies she's seen do have clear expectations and policies. And then you can acknowledge that we can revisit them and see how they're working and adjust. And so I just loved all that.
Yeah, and I loved her acknowledgement. It's a bit personalized based on maybe the company, maybe the part of the organization within the company, depending on your work type. And I think that is a consistency that we've heard through all of our guests this year, is it's not necessarily a one size fits all, but the affirmation, and you heard this in Rolly's podcast too, he was super clear on his expectation. And I have heard leaders, and we actually talked about it with Barb, where they want people to work from work. Now, that is one alternative based on a set of organizations and leaders. And back to the clarity comment, you then, as an employee, and you see a lot of this dialogue on LinkedIn right now, you get to decide whether or not that's an environment or a culture that you want to be a part of. As the leader gets to decide the culture, you as the employee get to decide if, yeah, you have choices. But I think what we then got into is you also have to understand the implications of those choices. In a previous pod, we talked about visibility and the implications of visibility. We talked about how if you're not there, how it impacts the speed of decision making. And depending on your organization, that might be exceptionally critical or just critical. I don't think it's ever anything less than ever critical. You got to greatly critical. But if you're in a startup and it's small, and in Barb's point, or turnaround, and there's information that's flowing on a conversation by conversation basis, not being there get you out of the loop and out of the decision-making circle. So that is an implication. And then she kind of jumped into the mental health attributes, which I thought was fascinating. 34, the Harvard Business School article, 34 times a meeting is more effective if it's face-to-face. And then 72% of workers were feeling lonely. So there are the mental health implications of some of those policies and those decisions.
And she was clear that she wasn't 100% sure if there was any data on this, but she said, are the benefits from working from home most of the time diminishing? And so, yeah, these are all the things that I've continually said. It's just a big, wide open experiment right now.
Well, and I think we both lit up because we can all see each other while we're recording these, and we all lit up when she hit the 2D versus 3D definitions. So maybe you could hit that, because I think that was something that was both super impactful for us.
It was very clever, first of all, to be like, I had thrown out this metaphor to her that somebody had shared with me, that managing a hybrid or a remote setting is like managing in 2D versus 3D. And the fact that she went and looked up, I'll start thinking about this by just looking at the definitions. And then those definitions were just really symbolic. Like they really summarize the whole thing, like flat and inaccessible versus something that has shape and you can manipulate it, and not manipulate in a bad way, but like you can work with it and shape it.
And it's interactive and deep. And yeah, it was fascinating. And then I would like to close this episode with what I thought were the two most powerful words that she shared in the 45 to 50 minutes that we chatted. And you asked the great question, Dana, I think, of one thing you could tell a struggling leader. And I will close by sharing Barb's words, which are trust yourself. So with that, we will wrap this pod and we will say, trust yourselves, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.